We are celebrating all things German and German-American with this lecture here this afternoon. So welcome to everyone, and a very warm welcome to our guest speaker, Greg Hardman. He's the president and CEO of Christian Moerlein Brewing Company in Cincinnati, and he was so kind to volunteer his services to come and speak with us this afternoon as we celebrate National German Week and German American Day here at NKU. Since 2004, Greg has been the owner of the Christian Moerlein Brewing Company of Cincinnati, Ohio, which is a leading craft beer producer in the Midwest region of the U.S. In 2010, he continued the return to Cincinnati's grand brewing traditions by brewing the first Christian Moerlein in Cincinnati's over-the-Rhine brewery district since the start of Prohibition in 1919. Pretty impressive. In 2012, he led the effort to open the Moerlein Lager House next to the Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati Riverfront Park. I see we have a fan of the Lager House there. Here? Yes. And this is one of the largest brew pubs in the world and a tribute to Cincinnati's celebrated brewing heritage. The title of Greg's lecture is From 19th Century German Immigrant to 21st Century Craft Brewer, the Story of Christian Moerlein Brewing Company, in which he will tell us the story of German immigrant Christian Moerlein, who was born in Bavaria in 1818 and settled in Cincinnati in 1841, and we will get many other interesting details about Christian Moerlein in the lecture. Moerlein founded the Christian Moerlein Brewing Company in Cincinnati, which during the company's production peak shipped to places as far as Europe and South America. We're very excited to have Greg here with us to learn more about this particular aspect of the rich German heritage of our region. Thank you, Greg, for being with us here today. It is very gracious of you to offer your personal time to come and speak with us. And I would like to present you with a small token of our appreciation for your generosity. A framed version of the poster for the event. So,
thank you.
That's So I would like to offer you, in the best German I can muster, I'm a Spanish professor, herzlich willkommen. And before Greg begins, I want to thank our sponsors on behalf of Andrea Feiler, who invited Greg here to speak to us. She's one of our German instructors. Thanks to the World Languages and Literatures Department here at NKU, and also a special thanks to our academic coordinator, Tiffany Budd, for her excellent work on the publicity for the event. And also a thanks to NKU's History and Geography Department, in particular the department chair, Bill Landon, who cannot be here with us today. So without further ado, I would like to invite Greg to take the floor, but I'm going to go over here. Okay. Oh, you need the microphone. Don't be a microphone.
Okay, I have to make a little change here. Well, while it's loading up, I'll talk with you here a little bit. As you know, I'm Greg Hardman. I'm president and CEO of Christian Moerlein Brewing Company. I've been in the alcoholic beverage industry for 32 years. I started as a freshman at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. And I was really always interested in beer, and when I graduated from Ohio University, I went to career planning and placement to get a job, and I was offered a job with both Xerox as well as being offered a job with a local beer distributorship in Athens, Ohio, where I went to school. So I called my mother. I was offered both jobs, and I said, oh, I got a job, and she was really happy. And I said, well, I had two job offers. One was Xerox and this great 6-week training program, and back in 1984, copiers and faxes and all that were really the rage, and computers were just kind of coming on board, and Xerox was like this really great company to work for, had an unbelievable training program. And my mother was like, oh, wow, that's fantastic. And I said, yep, but I took the job with the local beer distributor, calling on all the bars where I went to college. And she was, I thought she was going to die on the other end of the phone. And she said, why would you do that? And I said, because that's something I can do well. Let's see here. There we go. I'm here to tell you a little bit about Mr. Christian Moerlein and his brewing company and how it came from a 19th century German immigrant all the way up to being a 21st century craft brewer. And Mr. Christian Moerlein was actually born in Truppach, Bavaria in 1818, May 13th of 1818. And he this was after the Napoleonic Wars, and basically Christian Moerlein was learned how to brew beer from his uncle, and he was not the eldest son. So not being the eldest son in Germany in the 1800s meant you weren't going to get the farm, roughly. So not that he wasn't going to get the farm, he asked his father to ask his permission to seek his opportunity, and that was to immigrate to this country called America. And basically, he worked, his father gave his approval, he worked from farm to farm in Germany. It wasn't like today, hop on a plane, 12 hours later, man, you're in the hotel with a cocktail or a beer. That isn't the case. You work from farm to farm. All the way up to Bremerhaven, which is the port in the north, and sought passage across to America. Took about 58 days roughly. Get off in Baltimore and work from, again, worked his way across the eastern part of the United States to Pittsburgh, Wheeling, West Virginia, settled in Portsmouth, Ohio to work at a distillery. He stayed there actually for a couple of years, and then eventually made his way to this great city of Cincinnati that had a lot of German-speaking population. And Christian Moerlein started out literally as a ditch digger, and he would dig ditches for like 50 cents a day, and eventually got to where he was able to own his own blacksmith shop. Remember, we didn't have little mini cars and cars like we do today. This is being a blacksmith back in the 1800s, in the 1840s in Cincinnati, you really needed to have blacksmiths. So he worked hard, and then finally got a second blacksmith shop. And it was about that time that he decided that he was going to begin to brew beer. And he wanted to brew that beer that he learned how to brew in Germany, which was all the rage, and that was called lager beer. And lager beer had not made its way to Cincinnati, Ohio in 1853. It supposedly got to Philadelphia in the 1840s, but it did not make its way to Cincinnati. All the beer brewed in Cincinnati was ales, and so he was trying to experiment a little bit with the beers, and essentially he was got a recipe that he liked, and he partnered up with a gentleman by the name of Adam Dillon to form the Elm Street Brewing Company in 1853, just north of Findlay Market. And Adam Dillon, back in the day, in 1853, sudden illness comes about you, and today we go to urgent care, or we go to the hospital, or we go to the doctor. Well, things weren't quite like that back then. You died sometimes, and Adam Dillon, his partner, was like dead within a year. So he partnered up with a gentleman by the name of Conrad Windisch. Later fame was of the Windisch Mühlhauser Brewing Company. Mühlhauser for you people in southern Ohio and northern Kentucky, in any event, but Mühlhauser and Windisch created the Lion Brewery of Cincinnati, which eventually the same building turned into the Burger Brewing Company, of all places, off of Central Parkway. back to Conrad Vindish. Mr. Vindish was Mr. Moerlein's partner. See, this is my security notes. I know them by heart, but I always like to have it just in case. They became partners, and it lasted for a little while, not very many years, but they together finally in 1856 brewed lager beer in Cincinnati. And it's the first known lager beer to be brewed. We have not, I'm the elected president of the Brewery District Community Urban Redevelopment Corporation in Cincinnati, and we haven't found anybody that brewed lager beer in Cincinnati prior to them. There's people that brewed beer. They had lagering cellars for the underground, but that was more for because they needed it for the brewing process of beer because there was no refrigeration back then. So in any event, Conrad Vindish and him eventually split up. Moerlein went his own way. German immigrants after in 1848 or 49 in Germany, was it 48 or 49? Right around the same time, okay. They were split in Germany, basically, coming to America to seek their fortune, their opportunity. And where did they all come into Germany? Come from in Germany into Cincinnati, into this little area called Over the Rhine. So basically, it was one of these situations where the canal, the Miami-Erie Canal, that came down from the Great Lakes, basically was coming down Central Parkway to Central Avenue, and the German immigrants named going over the canal, going over into the Rhine. That's how that name came about. The Miami-Erie Canal to brewers was essential, because this is where you would be able to get your raw ingredients coming down. So unlike today, where I can order, specific malts and specific hops and specific yeast strains to brew beer perfectly, back then you brewed beer with what kind of came down the pike, what came into you by the Miami-Erie Canal or the river, or you grew it in a farm, or you tried to buy bushels of barley from farmers what didn't grow very well in this area. So that's what happened. So you brewed with what you had. Well, Moerlein did that the best out of anybody. Security note. And he brewed it so well that he went to the Cincinnati Industrial Exposition. I'm sorry, he went to the Philadelphia Industrial Exposition. Matt, I'm giving a lecture at NKU right now. I always do this, you know that. All right, I'll talk to you, see if I always answer my phone. But anyhow, so what happened was they went to the Philadelphia Exposition, and Moerlein beer of Cincinnati was all the rage. And Philadelphia was like the brewing capital of America, the first place where lager beer was supposedly brewed. And they were like, the Moerlein beer is fantastic from Cincinnati. So then there was the Cincinnati Industrial Exposition. And these were grand expositions that happened to basically further economic commerce in America. And Cincinnati was considered the gateway to the West. I mean, they were like still putting railroad tracks going out west, okay, and stuff. And you went out that way, it started getting, that was the other end of the earth back then. So what happened was in 1800, from about 1881 to about 1890-ish, they had this 10-year exposition that happened to be in Cincinnati, Ohio, of all places. And it was located where Washington Park is. They had a big grand exposition hall. A music hall right across the street was built as part of the Industrial Exposition. And so these great structures were built there, and they actually had a big moat kind of going around, like Venice, around Washington Park, around the Industrial Exposition Center, where Moerlein was exhibiting his beer. And he actually won 4 gold medals during the Industrial Exposition, which was like a big deal because the world came to Cincinnati. And high technology back in 1881, 82, 83, 84 was where you took a barrel of beer, a wooden barrel of beer, and you stuck it up on a apparatus, and you would actually siphon it out into flip-top bottles. That was high technology. And that was Moerlein's display, showing people that he could send them keg beer from Cincinnati, Ohio, via the Ohio River, or by that time, trains started to be a big factor, and the Miami-Erie Canal went whoosh, goodbye. And he would ship beer to Los Angeles, to New York City, to Baltimore, all the way down to Panama, to Japan, to Europe. The Moerlein beer from Cincinnati in these kegs would make it to these operations, and they would bottle it from keg in all these cities. He was actually one of the first guys that invented mass distribution of beer. This is a 19th century German immigrant that was the youngest son, didn't get the farm, and he's one of America's greatest beer barons. And when I went back to Truppach, Bavaria about 9 years ago, I walked around and said, does anybody know any Moerleins? Does anybody know any Moerlein? No one knew Moerlein. Nobody knew who Christian Moerlein was, one of America's greatest beer barons. Hell, people in Cincinnati didn't even know who the hell he was. I had to tell them. So bottom line was, it was one of these situations where while I was in Germany, I had a great thought. And that thought was, we need to start telling people about our brewing heritage and history. We were a great beer town. And so we took a guy by the name of Christian Moerlein, and we figured out to tell his story. And I called a friend of mine, Dr. Don Heinrich Tolzmann, Don Tolzmann, who writes like German books and all that, and I said, hey, you got to tell the story of Christian Moerlein. I'm in Truppach, Bavaria, and nobody knows this guy. And they're like, and so I took a little picture that's in his book where I was there, went click to the Truppach, Bavaria sign, and I took another picture of a house that I was like, you know, that looks like a grand house, like Christian Moerlein could have lived there. It turned out it really was the house that Christian Moerlein actually lived in, and that. And what was unique of this whole thing is that I worked for a German brewery called Warsteiner. And I was the president and CEO of North American operations. And I left all of that to bring Cincinnati's brewing history and heritage back and Christian Moerlein back. But I had friends all over Germany, and some of my friends worked at the Meisel Brewery in Bayreuth, which is part of Bavaria, kind of in the Franconia region, okay? Known for smoked beer, by the way, which you gotta like smoked beer to like smoked beer. I think it's okay. But in any event, I went to my friends at the Meisel Brewery, and I went to Jeff Meisel and Herman Joseph Berger, good friends of mine, and I said, you know, Truppach is like literally 8 kilometers away, and nobody knows who Christian Moerlein is. And they said, we have a surprise for you. They bring a guy into the office that, I'm not kidding you, looks like this guy. And he's a relative of Moerlein working at the brewery from Truppach, and he didn't even know who Christian Moerlein was. So it was important we told this story. And I told him the story, and he sent me Christian Moerlein's birth certificate. I don't have it here. You go to the church in Germany to get like your birth certificates, unlike here where we go to City Hall or wherever we go. And he sent me Christian Moerlein's birth certificate and said, my gosh, you're right. So then it was just a great story, and I thought it was really awesome that we have this great Cincinnati beer baron that got up to the 4th largest brewery in the United States. Probably says that somewhere. So in any event, Christian Moerlein had great success. He became the largest brewer in the state of Ohio, one of the largest brewers in America, all because of this great beer. He won these industrial expositions with gold medals, and basically they ceased operations in 1919, all because of this noble experiment called Prohibition. So Mr. Moerlein passed away in 1897. His family kept running it, and in 1919, voila, Prohibition. You ripped out the economic commerce of all of over the Rhine. And you had literally thousands of people employed in the brewing industry because everything was hand done back then. Probably thousands and thousands more working at the over 200 saloons on Vine Street. And it became a situation where, whoosh, gone overnight. And at the end of Prohibition in 1932, it was rumored the Moerlein Brewing Company was going to come back, but they did not come back. They basically, they were landowners, they sold off all their land, and Moerlein did not come back in 1932-33. It didn't come back until a gentleman by the name of Bob Pohl from the Utapole Brewing Company brought Christian Moerlein back in 1981 as a better beer. In 1981, I don't even think, we didn't have cell phones. I think the president might have had a cell phone. We didn't have cell phones, okay? We didn't have laptop computers. We didn't have smartphones. I mean, we didn't have GPSs. Didn't have any of that stuff. But they brought Christian Moerlein back as a better beer, a precursor to the craft beer category. And Christian Moerlein was all the rage. It was one of the pioneer craft beers of the craft beer category. The other craft beer that was out there, Christian Moerlein was one of the first craft beers sold in America, and definitely one of the first sold east of the Mississippi, where the one west of the Mississippi, do you know what brand that was?
Coors.
Craft, not crap. Craft. Does anybody know?
Anchor Steam?
Anchor Steam by Fritz Maytag, of the Maytag washer fame, and later Maytag blue cheese. So I'm like a wealth of information, man. It's unbelievable. Okay, so what happens is, Moerlein is one of the first craft beers sold east of the Mississippi. And it was all the rage. So we're one of the pioneer craft beers, and I was just like, man, this brand is unbelievable. And in 1984, Bob Pohl of the Utapole Brewing Company, who brought it back, did something else unbelievable, never heard of. He took this beer to the German government and asked them to test it to see if it was Reinheitsgebot pure, which is the German purity law of 1516, which says that you can only use malt, hops, yeast, and water in the beer. And lo and behold, Christian Moerlein was absolutely the first American beer to pass the German purity law. And so when you buy Christian Moerlein, the brand, you get a piece of paper from the German government that says you're the first American beer to pass the German purity law. So I knocked on Jim Cook's door one day from Samuel Adams. I was like, hey, Jim, I got this letter that says I'm the first American beer to pass the German purity law. And lo and behold, they don't say it anymore. It's amazing. But in any event, it's just a great thing. So in 2004, I came on the scene. I woke up one morning and I told my wife, I said, I'm going to resign as president and CEO of North American Operations of Warsteiner. And she was like, what? And I said, yeah, I'm going to resign. I'm going to bring Cincinnati's brewing heritage back. And she's like, oh, okay, that's noble. Like, okay. She's like, Greg, why do you have to do this? You could, like, retire. And I said, because I'm passionate about this. I feel like I have institutional knowledge of Cincinnati brewing and their brewing history, and I can bring this back in such a way that it puts craft beer and Cincinnati brewing on the map, man. We can be that beer town we were once again. It's in our blood. There's hundreds of thousands of people where your mothers, your fathers, your uncle, your cousin, your grandfather, grandmother worked at these great Cincinnati breweries. It's in your blood. You are the people partying in those beer halls. And I expect to see you all Friday night at the Brewing Company up at, over the Rhine. So that's basically, it's one of these situations where she said, tell me you have a plan. And I said, yeah, I got a plan. She said, no, tell me you have a plan right now. Yeah, I got a plan. And off the top of my head, I recited a plan that said, I said, I have a 4-phase plan. And she says, lay it on me, man. And I said, well, I'm going to return the local ownership of Cincinnati's great beer brands. She's like, oh, that's great, Greg. That's going to really work. I said, oh, people will like it. I said, then I'm going to reposition the brands to make them much more relevant to today's consumers. Build my base of sales. Number 3, I'm going to open a local brewery in the Over the Rhine Brewery District in Cincinnati. And in December of 2010, we brewed the first Christian Moerlein in Over the Rhine in over 90 years. And number 4, I'm going to open the world-class Moerlein Lager House as a tribute to Cincinnati's grand brewing traditions. And she said, oh my gosh, here we go. So it took me a while to do it, but we did every one of those. Christian Moerlein probably be proud. So today, we're Cincinnati's craft brewer. We actually have a brewery at Over the Rhine, which is a production craft brewery. I was a contract brewer for many years, just like Samuel Adams, just like Brooklyn Brewery, just like tons of other little small craft brewers until you get your base of sales. And now I brew all Christian Moerlein in Cincinnati at the new Christian Moerlein Production Brewery. And we are the second largest Ohio-owned craft brewery in the state, hopefully soon to be number 1. Great Lakes is number 1 out of Cleveland, and we're number 2. And we are the largest craft brewer in Cincinnati that is locally owned. We reposition those brands. We've had some great success. Right now we're in our Moerlein 5th and Vine. This summer we had the Moerlein 7 Hefeweizen, and coming up we have the Chris Kindle. Well, here's kind of an interesting story. So I came into this only wanting to be Christian Moerlein and a craft brewer. I only bought the Christian Moerlein brand. I didn't buy all the other Cincinnati beer brands. And what I didn't realize was that literally tens of thousands of people worked at these breweries, and they said, oh, you got to bring back Little Kings, and you got to bring back Hootie Delight, and you got to bring back Burger Beer, and you got to bring back... I was like, I don't have to do any of that. I'm not bringing any of those back. Well, people coming up, writing me letters and sending me emails and seeing me in a bar and talking to me, I finally did it. And I went and I bought all the other Cincinnati beer brands that were available on the Cincinnati side. And then I refocused the Hootapole brand. This is actually their original tagline, America's Great Small Brewery, as a tribute to Ludwig Hootapole. And Ludwig Hootapol's claim to fame was he's the first Cincinnati-born beer baron. All the guys before him were from Germany. And this is, now his parents were from Germany. He was a first-generation German. And he started a lot of the different singing societies and those type of things in Cincinnati. But I brewed this beer as a tribute to Ludwig Hootapole. And I also like to tell people that Christian Moerlein, the craft brewery, is the first craft brewery in the world to bring back the local heritage brands of a city. We actually own a domestic beer company, which we're the only craft brewer in the United States that does that. Only one in the world that I know of. And I told you most of this right here. I always like to point this out. There's this little brand called Yuengling. Sorry. Yuengling actually is the direct competitor to Utapol and Amber Lager. And well, when I designed Utapol Amber Lager, I designed it to be Reinheitsgebot pure, malt, hops, yeast, and water. And what I did was, I actually designed a recipe ourselves, and we went into Pennsylvania, and we did a test in a hotel with 30 people that said they were Yuengling drinkers, hardcore Yuengling drinkers. And we did a taste test. Didn't tell them who we were, what we were, and we did a taste test. And 29 out of 30 of them preferred Utapol Amber Lager over the beer they said they drank. And I looked at our brewmaster and went, I think that's the recipe. Followed by, we then revealed it, and they were shocked. And like 25 out of 30 liked our packaging better. And when they heard it had no adjunct, and Yuengling had adjunct, they were like, how do I get this beer? And that's a true story. And Utapol Amber Lager, here's an interesting story for you. When Yuengling hit Ohio, was the only brand of beer that was up in sales in the whole state of Ohio when they came in. So, and we do real well. We do well through over the Rhine and everywhere, even on the Kentucky side. We now have branched out the Utapol line to where you may have heard of a thing called Bachfest in Cincinnati. That's actually held at the Christian Moerlein Brewing Company. Right here, this is our Bach beer. This is our Summer Pils. We're into Oktoberfest now, and we also brew a porter. And then we actually have a production craft brewery in over the Rhine, where we got into this building, and what was interesting of it, it was the original Kaufman Brewing Company malt house. And we discovered, after we got into the building, some of the largest underground cellars, pristine, in North America in the basement of our building, and didn't even know they were there. So if you come on a brewery tour at Christian Moerlein, you not only see a wonderful craft brewery, an authentic, beautiful, arch ceiling German beer hall, but you actually get to go into our underground cellars as well. And again, we have an event center there where we hold Bachfest and numerous other events. This is actually the facility right here. This is Moore Street. This is St. Francis Seraph School. And then the Shell Station on Liberty is right here. And we own all of that up there, about 3 acres of land. It's a 125,000 square foot facility. We have about 150 parking spots, we have loading docks, and we have an authentic brewery within it. It used to be the Husman potato chip plant by ConAgra, so it had all the modern infrastructure of wiring and things we needed, and now it's a really beautiful craft brewery. Then, along the way of doing all of this, does anybody know what an RFP is? It's a request for proposal. Well, I saw an RFP, and it was to put in a restaurant in the new Cincinnati Riverfront Park in Cincinnati, in Cincinnati, that's great, between 2 stadiums, and